I'm just proud of him and glad to have him do it against a team that, unfortunately came up a little bit short with at the beginning of the year. I know he's been waiting at the second crack at this.
The moment the clock hit 0 and the Cleveland Browns sealed their win over the Cincinnati Bengals, most people thought the story was already written. Myles Garrett had just etched his name into NFL history. 23 sacks in a single season, a defensive performance so dominant it demanded headlines on its own. But then Garrett stepped up after the game and did something that instantly shifted the narrative across the entire league. He didn't talk about himself. He didn't soak in the record. Instead, he pointed straight at his quarterback and said what many weren't ready to hear. This win belonged to Shedeur Sanders. And that statement? It turned heads everywhere. Because when one of the most feared defenders in football publicly puts his stamp of approval on a quarterback, especially one who's been questioned, doubted, and dissected all season, that's not just praise. That's validation. That's a message to the locker room, the front office, and the entire NFL. And suddenly, this game against the Bengals became much bigger than a final score. On paper, Shedeur Sanders' stat line doesn't scream dominance. Casual fans scrolling through box scores might shrug and move on. The numbers don't jump off the screen. There were missed opportunities, drives that stalled, moments where the offense looked disjointed. But that surface-level view completely misses what actually happened on that field. Myles Garrett saw it clearly, and anyone who truly watched the game knows it too. Shedeur Sanders was not the problem. He was surviving chaos. From the opening drive, Sanders was under siege, pass rushers breaking through almost immediately, timing routes disrupted before they could even develop, and when Sanders did make the right read and delivered a clean, catchable football, too often it hit the turf anyway. Running backs dropped passes in the flat. Receivers failed to settle into soft zones. These weren't reckless throws or bad decisions. These were plays that should have extended drives and changed momentum, undone by execution failures around him. That's the kind of situation that breaks quarterbacks, especially young ones, especially ones still fighting to silence critics. You could feel the frustration building, not in an emotional meltdown kind of way, but in that quiet, internal grind where a quarterback knows he's doing his job and still watching the offense stall. And yet, Sanders didn't unravel. He stayed composed, he stayed aggressive, and he kept coming back out there. Meanwhile, the Cleveland defense was putting on a masterclass, and at the center of it all was Myles Garrett. This wasn't just a good game for him. This was history. Sack number 23 didn't just break a record. It cemented his season as one of the most dominant defensive campaigns the league has ever seen. Every snap, Cincinnati's offensive line looked terrified. Chips, double teams, extra protection schemes. None of it mattered. Garrett was inevitable. What makes this even more staggering is that Garrett already owns another rare piece of NFL history. Earlier this season, he recorded 5 sacks in a single game. 5. That's not just winning a matchup. That's hijacking an entire game plan. Offensive coordinators spend sleepless nights trying to design ways to neutralize players like Garrett, and still, he wrecks everything. He doesn't just pressure quarterbacks. He dictates how offenses operate before the ball is even snapped. And yet, despite all of that, Garrett chose to shine the spotlight somewhere else. After the game, when asked about the turning point, Garrett didn't hesitate. He said flat out that Shedeur Sanders made the plays that brought the Browns back in the second half and pushed them to victory. That's not empty locker room talk. That's a defensive superstar acknowledging that when the offense finally needed to answer, Sanders delivered. Garrett talked about how Sanders had been waiting for this moment, waiting to get another crack at a team he came up short against earlier in the season, waiting for the chance to put things right. And in Garrett's eyes, Sanders did exactly that. Calm, confident, right down the middle when it mattered most. The second half told a completely different story. Something shifted when Sanders came back out of that locker room. His footwork looked sharper. His timing improved. He started trusting his reads and ripping throws into tight windows without hesitation. The Bengals' defense didn't suddenly get worse. Sanders simply got better. He started converting third downs that had felt impossible earlier in the game. He hit receivers in stride on crossing routes. He dropped perfectly layered balls over linebackers and in front of safeties. These weren't safe conservative checkdowns. These were quarterback throws, the kind that separate guys who manage games from guys who win them. And then there's the pressure. 6 sacks. That number jumps off the page. Critics will point to it immediately, but sacks are one of the most misleading stats in football, especially when viewed without context. The Bengals' defensive front was living in the backfield. Protection broke down repeatedly, blitzes came free, stunts weren't picked up. There were plays where Sanders had defenders in his face almost instantly after the snap. Yet even under that kind of pressure, Sanders kept his eyes downfield. He stepped up when he could. He slid laterally to buy time. He took hits to complete throws. He didn't panic. He didn't turtle. And sometimes, yes, that meant taking a sack instead of forcing a disastrous mistake. That's quarterback maturity. This is exactly why Myles Garrett's words carry so much weight. Garrett knows what real pressure looks like. He creates it for a living. He understands when a quarterback is failing versus when he's fighting uphill against impossible odds. And in this game, Garrett saw a quarterback who fought. Garrett made it clear that in the biggest moments, Sanders was the one who settled the offense, the one who made the plays that allowed the defense's dominance to actually matter. Because no matter how many sacks you get, you still need points. You still need drives. You still need a quarterback who can close. Context matters here. This wasn't just another game. This was the final game of the season against a division rival. A chance to end the year with momentum instead of frustration. These are the games players remember. These are the performances that shape off-season narratives and locker room belief. Cleveland struggled early. The offense couldn't find rhythm. Cincinnati started to feel comfortable, but Sanders never checked out. When the second half began, he took control at the line of scrimmage, adjusting protections, communicating clearly, reading coverages pre-snap. This wasn't a passenger performance. This was leadership. Drive by drive, the Browns clawed back. Third and long conversions kept hopes alive. Red zone opportunities turned into points. And with every successful possession, Sanders' confidence grew. He wasn't flashy for the sake of it. He was precise, efficient, ruthless when it mattered. When Garrett says he's proud of Sanders, that statement carries layers. Pride doesn't come from one throw or one drive. It comes from watching someone withstand adversity, criticism, and pressure without folding. It comes from seeing a teammate rise when things get ugly. What makes this moment even more telling is that Garrett could have made the night all about himself. No one would have blamed him. Breaking a sack record is career-defining. But instead, he used his voice to elevate his quarterback. That speaks volumes about the culture forming in Cleveland. Despite the sacks, despite the drops, despite the imperfect stat line, Sanders earned something far more valuable than flashy numbers. He earned respect. Respect from the locker room, respect from the defense, respect from a generational player who understands exactly what winning football requires. This win against the Bengals wasn't just another mark in the standings. It was a statement, a glimpse of what this team can become when its quarterback and its defense are aligned. When the guy taking the hits is trusted, when the guy delivering the hits believes in him. Myles Garrett made history that night. There's no denying that. But by choosing to spotlight Shedeur Sanders, he may have done something just as important. He shifted the conversation. He reminded everyone that football isn't just about numbers. It's about moments, about resilience, about stepping up when it matters most. And if this game was any indication, Cleveland may have found something real. A quarterback who doesn't flinch, a defense that dominates, and a locker room starting to believe in itself. If that's the foundation, this win might not just close a season. It might open a new chapter,